You've tuned into the Bellingham Podcast for the week of October 6th, 2019. You cool cats are listening to episode 132. From that city by the Salish Sea and wearing a turtleneck, I'm AJ Barce.
And with my mug firmly in hand, Daddy-O, I am Chris Powell. On this episode, coffee. So fun to drink in the morning. Those grounds percolate my mind. And now you find the Bellingham Podcast.
Is this coffee? Well, no. This is coffee.
Man, you are one cool cat, Chris. How you doing?
There's not enough O's and cool to describe me. AJ, how about yourself?
Okay, so this... this mini-series today has got to be the one that we are the most amped up about.
Tongue firmly planted in cheek, along with the liquid we're about to talk about. Did you catch all those references in there, folks? Let's give a little bit of an Easter egg, inside about what was going on, because I just love this.
Yeah. So back in 1961, the Coffee Brewing Institute, which I have not confirmed this, I'm pretty sure is attached to Cornell's food lab or has some ties back to Cornell, did this amazing video. It's like 13 minutes long on This is Coffee.
Just like that guy said, this is coffee.
Don't die.
Anyway, so you get this. As we're thinking about, we want to do a little bit of a mini-series coming up on coffee and a bunch of other stuff. Let's have fun with this instead of a standard intro. Well, I happened to unearth this one from the archives, and then all of a sudden, I wanted to make my wife happy. So my hook was, if anyone caught this, the Mike Myers... Whoa, man.
Yeah.
That poem from So I Married an Axe Murderer. We're getting really obscure on this show, folks.
No, you're getting really obscure, and I'm just following your lead.
All right, so
this the next couple of episodes is going to be dedicated to coffee. And of course, Chris and I are doing it in the traditional Bellingham podcast fashion of doing it very obscure as possible.
In the month of October as well.
In the month of October, which, what happens in October? That's a thing. Is there anything else that goes on in October?
It gets colder around here.
There's that. That's hence turtleneck and beatnik style, right?
Halloween.
Also Oktoberfest.
Oh, yes. That other drinking tradition.
Right. So we wanted to kind of turn October on its head. Instead of doing Oktoberfest with a drank, we're doing it with our drink. We're doing it dedicated to coffee.
With a cuppa, if you will.
With a cuppa and a tonga planta firm in cheek.
Something like that. So before we begin on that, I wanted to have a little bit of recap on last episode 131 for you playing at home. There was a Bellingham food truck roundup over at the Barclay Village Green last weekend. As we're recording this, it was last weekend. My wife and I went to it, had a great time.
Did you fly a kite?
Not quite, but there were some high wind gusts going on. It was great that the throngs of people, that's lots and lots of you who don't know what throngs mean, were helping, as they're ordering their food, they were helping hold down the canopies of the food vendors so the canopies will not blow away in the 35 mile an hour gusts. Lots of great music, lots of great food. Wanted to clarify a couple things because we talked about some things. I made reference to a truck called Sage. Yeah. Well, it turns out that once again I didn't do my homework beforehand,
or our notes got cut off, one of the two.
Sure, but there is a food truck in town that is called Sage Against the Machine.
Yes,
you heard me. Sage Against the Machine. Love those folks. They are a plant-based food truck. Yeah. And so you will find Sage Against the Machine on the streets or for catering events as well. So from a vegan or from a dietary standpoint.
Plant-centric standpoint.
There you go, yes. The second one that I noticed, and there were a lot of great food truck vendors out there. Love the barbecue. Love the Mexican food. There was one in particular that I just love the cheeky description with, because with food trucks you can kind of have a little bit of liberty with the name of it. The Mobile Mouth Hole. Gotta love that. They have tacos and much more. But one of the items that really caught my attention that a lot of people were enjoying, especially on a brisk, windy Saturday afternoon, was tachos.
Tachos?
Tachos. You heard me correctly. They are tater tot nachos.
Oh, my.
Yeah. You drizzle some of that tasty cheese sauce over some tater tots, and you add a little bit of smoked pulled pork, watch me enunciate, and some shredded chipotle chicken, or, one or the other. And you got yourself a tasty little bite-sized thing to enjoy.
Oh, my.
Mobile Mouthful. We got a couple links in the show notes for the love of Alex Skolnick and Chris Oliva.
Drink.
And so wanted to clarify that before we dive into what we're doing to wash down all that potential food.
Also, we had a shout out on that episode, and I had gotten in touch with that said shout out, and Clarissa will be also supplying us some extra material in episodes to come.
Excellent.
So more on that later.
Great. Stay tuned for the Vegan in Bellingham experience.
So before we dive into our main topic, we should also say that we might be percolating across the airwaves on KMRE 102.3 FM.
They are community powered, and they air our show Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on 102.3 FM and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Back up a half hour. They're also streaming worldwide at
KMRE.org.
And thank you very much for airing our show. We appreciate it.
So, Chris.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
All right, Mike Myers. We're talking about coffee. Let's do it. We wanted to just do this because we talked about places in Bellingham to get a cup. And we actually did a show live in your kitchen.
Yes,
recorded
twice
about your ways of assembling the coffee experience. Let's just do a little bit of a history and a background and some little known facts you may not be aware of about your and our favorite drink.
So it all starts back, and what's funny is, of course, with something like this that is basically an herbal infused drink. That's all really coffee is, if you think about it. You got coffee from a tree, and it gets plucked, roasted, brewed. So the history that I'm giving is going to be basically back to the 15th century. Now, granted, any historians, and you know who you are, who are listening to this, is like, well, actually, Nami, it goes all the way back to... We're only going from the 15th century forward, kind of like our other history shows. Yes, there are other history, but we're going to go from at least documented, as reported on the internet, history.
We could call this truncated history.
This is truncated history.
I like it. We'll remember that for future reference.
Yes, definitely. So the word coffee, C-O-F-F-E, entered the English language in 1582 via the Dutch, and I do not speak Dutch, but I'm going to try, but kofi with
Sounds
a K.
Good. Yes.
It was borrowed actually from the Ottoman Turkish kahve, K-A-H-V-E, in turn borrowed from the Arabic kawa, which is Q-A-H-W-A-H.
Sounds great.
And all of the links and even the languages are all in the show notes.
Drink.
So
literally.
So literally, the history of coffee dates back to the 15th century. That's where we're going to chime in at, but possibly earlier because there are myth, lore, and legends. However, I'm going to disavow that. The first recorded record of public place serving coffee can be dated back to 1475. The Kivahan was the name of the first coffee shop, and it was located in a Turkish city known as Constantinople, now Istanbul.
There you go. Sounds good.
So if you think about it in terms of Turkish coffee, that's actually a specific. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had actually Turkish coffee?
Not to my recollection.
Oh, man.
I've had many different styles of coffee, but not Turkish.
So, and that gets into a whole other episode that we're going to be doing, which is the different styles of coffee. The coffee that you and I know the process of brewing has greatly evolved with technology, which is why we love it so much.
That's right.
But Turkish coffees originally served strong, black, and unfiltered. You actually drink the grinds.
Drinking the grinds,
yes.
so you can have all those in your teeth.
Well, see, that's how you think of it. So the reason why like different coffees like Espresso and Perk and all pour over, the grind itself, it dictates kind of the way that the method to which you brew. And so in Turkish coffee, if I were to show you some, which thanks Alicia for hooking me up, it is super fine powder. So Turkish coffee, they do it usually brewed in an Iberic.
Let's go with an Iberic.
They took coffee so serious back then. So serious. How serious, might you ask? It was so important to them during the time that it was legal in Turkey for a woman to divorce her husband if he could not supply her with enough coffee.
How much the pressure has been lifted from me.
But I cannot get work done. And my employer should know that if I do not have enough coffee supplied to me.
Well, I'm very blessed that my wife is able to get a pound of her favorite decaf roast whenever she feels like it, and I know what kind it is. So, yeah, the pressure's off me. Thanks, guys. That's something to be celebrating about.
And yes, historians, I am taking creative liberty on that fact, tongue planted firmly in cheek.
So lately there's they have world e-brick champions.
So when this goes into something else we'll cover later, but there are championship barista competitions.
Yeah.
So I had found a link, and it's in the show notes,
Drink.
to a YouTube video on how to make Iberic style coffee by the 2016 champion, and it shows this coffee maker, which if you haven't seen what this is, it's basically a copper, I'll say a copper craft, very small, a little bit bigger than perhaps the tamp on an espresso machine, and a handle sticking out, all made out of copper. And it sits on what looks like this big Bunsen burner. And that's all part of their process. You put in X amount of grams of super hyper, like, I'm going to call it the
granules,
the powdered sugar level of grind that is this coffee into this hot water. They pour it in, and you boil it for about 2.5 minutes. They pour the whole thing into a espresso cup, and then they let it sit for 2.5 minutes, and then you drink it. And you see it bloom just like everything else, the crema, but there is no pressure in this, like an espresso machine.
Okay.
If you don't know what that is, you should take a look at the link in the show notes.
Drink.
And yeah, take a look and be a little bit more cultured with your coffee.
Very good. So back then in the day, it wasn't all just like drinking the grounds and make your teeth all gritty. They did other ways of hacking their coffee way back then.
Yeah. So if we fast forward, so we're looking at back from, basically 1400 to 1500 and all the way through to the 1500s. The late 1500s is where we start to see the renaissance, as it were, of coffee. Okay, so the concept of doctoring one's coffee with sweeteners and specifically cream, that was introduced in Europe. So around 1529-ish, we start to see the first coffee houses in Europe established. And these coffee houses attracted a certain type of client, right?
Yes.
Because we traditionally speaking today, we associate intellectuals and hipsters, man, going to the coffee house.
What were the customers back then in the 1500s?
So funny that you should say that. 1580, Venetian botanist and physician Prospero Alpini imported coffee into the Republic of Venice. Okay. From Egypt. And coffee was seen as the drink of intellectuals and social gatherings, and lovers of chocolate gravitated towards because of the bitter notes, etc. It also kind of bloomed into the romantic side of things. And if it was also seen as a romantic gift to give coffee or to take someone to a coffee shop.
Oh, yes, as part of the courting ritual.
Exactly. So we'll fast forward even further. 1763, that's where we start to see the concept that coffee might be a miraculous drink. It might be seen as a health drink back then.
Well, of course.
Because intellectuals got behind it early on, man.
Yeah, you got to follow what the smart people are doing.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that bit of history because, again, like we see it at the coffee house is a gathering place. Yeah. It is a place for intellect, granted, albeit in front of a piece of technology with a glowing piece of fruit on the back of it, but the tradition still carries forward even 200-300 years later.
Sure. So AJ loves diving into the history of things, as you're well aware.
Well, so do you, Chris.
I know,
do you.
But I like the little known facts.
Yeah,
whenever
valid.
I'm watching a movie at home, I'm pulling up IMDb.
Yeah, you're the X-ray if you're used to the Amazon Prime thing.
Yeah.
Except I can just go Chris, and you're like. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to just share a couple. Did you know? Little bits of information about our favorite beverage. So the term espresso is Italian, but it actually means pressed out. It may give you something to talk about when you were indulging in your favorite beverage and say, by the way, barista behind the counter, did you know that this espresso that you're making for me means pressed out in Italian? And they'll just look at you with a dirty look. Should you want to take things too far? I've always wondered, when I have a cup of coffee, and usually with who knows what is put into it, sweeteners or other types of enhancements, it really gives me a jolt. It still the caffeine within the coffee still gives me a jolt, but there is a way you can go too far with your coffee consumption. as we're drinking, whenever I have my cup, I usually get the results, and I'm pretty wired, jittery. If I have 2 or 3 cups, then I turn into a tweakish person. There is a level of consumption that would be too far. Now, in some places that you look on the net, which I did in preparation for the show, if you were to drink 30 cups of coffee.
30?
30.
Oh, my.
Keeping in mind that a typical cup of coffee might be around 100 milligrams of caffeine per cup. If you're going for 3 grams of caffeine, that could be leading to an overdose.
Ooh.
Not just that, but the water that you are ingesting, 30 cups of water, might be a lot along those lines.
How could one sit still and also sit still?
You wouldn't really be sitting still. We'd be prying you off the wall.
Oh, my gosh.
So, moderation, y'all. That's what we're after around here. But for those of you that don't want the jolt of caffeine and you think you can get away with it by enjoying your favorite Java in decaf form, unfortunately, with that 100 milligrams of caffeine in a regular cup of coffee does not actually apply to decaf, but there's a little less, 2 to 12 milligrams. So you're still getting that drug. Caffeine is listed as a drug, whether you like it or not, but a decaf will be far less. So this is not saying you should have 8 times or 250 cups of coffee of decaf to reach that overdose level.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But anyway, so coffee wires us, and it gives us that boost in the morning. Did you know, AJ?
I did not know, Chris.
That in 2010, the year that my wife and I got married, scientists in England started to develop cars that could be run on coffee grounds.
No, I did not know this is a thing.
Here it comes. Get ready for the pun. They referred to it as the Car-pucino.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yes, and it turns out that this development of heating coffee grounds and other ways of providing the fuel for the vehicle, they were able to drive across the United Kingdom 250 miles in one trip.
Really?
Yeah, it's part of the thing. But as it turns out, they eventually crashed, not the car themselves. Then they had to take a nap. All right, fair enough. So let's go back to World War II, where America was at war, and the troops on the front lines, they weren't used to the jolt you would experience with full-bodied espresso, the whole shebang, because that's a whole lot of wham all in one time.
Yeah.
So the American GI Joes during World War II used to request it to be watered down significantly, in which this watered-down espresso became known as the Americano. Thank you very much. But this was also the genesis of the term cup of Joe.
Yeah.
Because the G.I. Joes. Hey, get it? All right, there you go. You heard it here first, or at least on the internet. So the average American worker, like us, and maybe you listening to us in your car or walking your pet or on the exercise bike, the average American worker will spend in 1 year over $1,000 on coffee. So you want to be able to, what would you do with that $1,000? I'm looking at you, iPhone 11. Can you give up coffee for a year and finance that purchase?
I can answer that. No.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Coffee is more important to me than an iPhone 11.
But when you break it down over 12 months, that's about $95 a month on coffee. And if you break that down every day, that's going to be about $3 a day. So
I make my own coffee. So
I mean,
that for me, that number is greatly reduced.
But this could also mean the sweeteners, the sugar, the cream,
got it.
All the accessories, maybe the travel mug that you might buy.
Sure.
That all contributes to the whole thing. So $1,100 a year. How about that? But as you put your coffee in a cup or in that metallic device that you carry with you.
Sup Clean Canteen.
There you go. If you want to keep your coffee warmer, you can add cream. Coffee.
If you're not lactose intolerant.
That's correct. Or almond milk or something else like that. Adding cream will help coffee stay warmer about 20% longer. Moving on.
Moving on.
No pun intended. So I just wanted to share a couple facts about coffee for that. Where do we want to take this miniseries, AJ?
So in the next couple of episodes, we're going to be kind of picking on this 1961 film, which is in the public domain, and it will be cited in the show notes.
Drink!
And it's just we're going to go through each different process. So this was the history. We're going to look at different brewing methods and preparation methods, and also some of the other cultural norms that are around coffee as it pertains to, of course, the Pacific Northwest.
Absolutely. And I will want to inject, we want to inject areas around Bellingham, Whatcom County that are of the coffee ilk in some way. We'll come up with a great way of tying it in. But
there's more to come. There's more to come.
Absolutely. Stay tuned.
But other than that, like, it is October.
Yes.
So happy fall, y'all. And what do you have? Do you have any personal goals that you're working on? Because we are in the last stretch for the end of the year.
True. And as I'm browsing on some of my sites, there is one of the men that I admire greatly and who's an inspiration to me. His name's Patrick. Hey, Patrick, in Minnesota. He had made reference about someone, one of his luminaries, creating a monthly bucket list. So we have our bucket lists, for example, for me, I want to be able to visit Iceland.
Sure.
And that's on my bucket list. I want to share the stage with Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen and Michael Anthony, and I want to play with Van Halen.
Okay.
But that's part of my bucket list. What if, folks, we decided to have a bucket list for a month? Now, what do we want to accomplish or things like that? Let's break it down in a month and maybe not have the moonshot,
right?
The unattainable in some aspects, but let's do something that's like positive wins, because we deal with a whole lot of loss in our lives. We deal with a whole lot of negative instances that can drag us down. Let's get something that we can say, you know what? I do this, I do this, I do this. This was a good month. So I got 5 because I can count them on one hand. In my October monthly bucket list, I want to at least first organize, tag, curate my 700 notes that I have.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got 700 notes in my notes app on my devices. It's called Bear. I've been going back and forth with so many note-taking applications, and I realized, I paid for a year of this. Well, I might as well give it a try, and just been kind of diving in for that.
Sure.
I want to access this information in a much easier format than just having a whole glop of stuff in one cluttered pile. So that's one thing. I want to watch 5 documentaries at least at the Pickford Cinema here in Bellingham this month, because it's October. And God bless the Pickford Cinema. They have 60 documentaries available for viewing, your viewing pleasure, and learning information about certain issues in 31 days in October. So you can check out Google Pickford Cinema, and then they'll have Doctober on the top of the webpage. Check out some of these titles. They tell a story. Mm-hmm. It's, I guess maybe I'm having a little bit of a hangover from the superhero fest that's been going on for the past few years in the big budget slam bam movies. I love to be able to hear a produced story, that kind of enhances my knowledge. So that's watch 5 documentaries.
Dig it.
I want to step foot in the gym at least 10 times this month. Now,
you've been working on that though, haven't you?
Trying to, yeah. But that was September. We're in a new month.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So, 31 days. You got the weekends. I usually don't go to the gym on the weekends, so that knocks out, let's just say 8. Got family-related things going on. If I can go 2.5 times a work week,
okay,
let's just say 2 to 3 times a week, that's pretty fair.
That's good.
I can get 10 or more times stepping foot in the gym. Once I'm in there, I got to be able to switch into my gym clothes and get a sweat. 4th thing, I want to sell some of my stuff. I still have some items and other things that I've accumulated over the years, either on my wife's Facebook marketplace, because she's got a Facebook account and I don't, or OfferUp.com.
Yeah, no, I know OfferUp. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Facebook Marketplace. I always forget that Facebook is actually a selling platform, amongst other things.
I've had some experience on Craigslist, and while I am fully capable of handling myself in the Wild West known as Bellingham Craigslist, I think I might want to try a different method.
Yeah.
See how that works out. And then finally, I want to walk our dog more times this month than my wife.
Does your wife do it more than you?
No, well, I mean, not exactly. We usually walk our dog together. It's a great way to spend time. But the weather is turning darker sooner.
Yes, true.
And getting chillier.
Absolutely.
And wifey gets cold.
Yes, I know.
So I'm looking to be able to be activated in this colder season that we have for the next, 13 months.
Yeah. Winter is coming.
Right. After work, after we have our dinner, with our containers that have still been going great, by the way.
Oh, still doing that thing.
Yep,
cool.
absolutely. It's awesome. To be able to say, I'm going to walk our dog, usually on sunset.
Yes,
usually,
I've seen you. I've seen you, neighbor. You're good.
Usually with a hooded article of clothing on. Usually with AirPods firmly in, listening to either loud music or a podcast. Walking our dog at night to get them their business. Those are the 5 things that I want to be able to say at the end of October. Hi, November. I did these things. That could be a cool thing. AJ,
mine's a lot more mellower. It's more for my own. To take care of myself more, basically.
Well, get mellow in your turtleneck then, Beatnik man.
Exactly, man. And for the record, because nobody can see this, Chris is wearing a hoodie and I'm wearing a gray V-neck. So we're not dressed up as Beatniks. There's no berets. There's none of that going on.
But at least in your mind, you're picturing it.
No neck beards, nothing like that.
Fine, yeah.
But no. So for me, I'm diving. This is the hygge season for me. Like ever since we did that episode, I've listening to more audiobooks, shifting gears a little bit so that it's low and slow as opposed to the fast, rampant pace that we typically do. But dedicating time to hygge, just to be in a comfy, cozy environment.
Unscripted pop quiz question.
Yes.
What audiobook are you listening to right now?
Funny that you should say that. Mike Viking, the guy who wrote the Little Book of Hygge,
okay,
just at the time of this recording, this week, dropped his new book, and it's revolving around memories.
Okay.
I'll link in the show notes.
Drink.
It's also narrated by him if you get the audiobook.
Very cool.
Sup, Libro FM.
Next.
So next for me is to walk at least once a week with my family. So you and we've talked about this on the show. Usually I'll hit a run or I do quite a bit of walking during the day. I want to get my wife and kiddo out, even though it's balmy and stuff. Just layer up and get everybody out. So that's kind of my one actual measurable goal for October.
Unscripted pop quiz follow-up question.
Of course.
You should see that eye roll he gave me, folks. Are you does you and your family prefer a playground area, a trail, or a paved sidewalk of a well-lit, depending after work and stuff like that?
All of the above. Usually we take the well-lit trail after we have gone to the playground and taking a trail to said playground.
Way to be cryptic in that. All right, fine. Next.
And then last but not least, as we get into the dark season, and this happens to you and me, like that seasonal affective disorder usually kicks in. And how I usually combat that is I try to set up a schedule for doing stuff that is creative, stuff that is outside of our normal work, stuff that is outside of the honey-do list, sup honey, and try to figure out what I want to do that's creative over the dark months and kind of put together a production schedule, basically, kind of like what we do for the show, but just for something. That's how the Analog Explorer got created. Things like that, but something for me to look forward to mentally. Yeah. And that's a lot of my bucket list for October is to prepare now as opposed to being, it's dark and cold and I'm grumpy. I'm trying to curb that. And that's what I'm taking October to do.
Very good. Well, fair warning, in November when we do whatever show number that's going to be, we're going to follow up on this. Yeah. It's like, did Chris do his 5 things that he talked about? Did AJ do his 3 things? Stay tuned in November for a follow-up. I think right now we should probably put a stirring stick in this show.
I was wondering what you're going to use.
Because a fork doesn't apply too much for coffee.
We got to get snapping,
Yes.
So that wraps it up for this edition of the Bellingham Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us wherever you like to listen to our show. Remember, if you are in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us on KMRE 102.3 FM.
They're community powered and they're streaming worldwide at kmre.org. Daddy-o.
And on that note, I'm AJ Barsay.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks once again for joining us on the Bellingham Podcast. I definitely think that we were erring on the cool side for this show.
Word, Daddy-o, word.